Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
We are back with John Riggio, the tennis legend. That's right. As a pro tennis player for so many years, author, architect, he's done it all and continues to do so. Live today to talk more about his amazing career. But first, I got to just give thanks and blessings to everyone. And for you as, our professional of the year for all these years, you've been here, with us, and your show has been doing amazing. You are amazing, and you've done so much. So Merry Christmas to you and your family. First, I want to start off.
Yes,
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Tell us what we're going to get into today. I know there's going to be more exciting stories always with you.
Yes, I have so many stories about tennis. And just to continue from the last tennis podcast, was interesting stories. But I think just before I say that, I just want to show a couple things. Was my book.
Yay.
Of course, is a combination of my stories on the podcast. It's my own court, the life story of tennis legend John Riggio, and it says all the stories about tennis, includes my professional work. And then just recently, I was just added to the magazine, the top 100 for innovators and entrepreneurs, and I'm here on page 42. And they say the whole story here. It has a little picture of my book and myself on here. It's really good. And I think that has to do with all the different things that you read about in the book and how I was able to do all kinds of things with my tennis career and everything. And so from the last podcast, there was some interesting stories. I think one thing about that podcast was I was talking about some different colleges. And I wanted to add a few notes. One of them was talking with Yale. So Yale really liked me for my profession, my architect profession. I had all the requirements necessary with the different grades, test scores, everything like that. But in fact, it wasn't a one-shot thing. I think most people would just get a letter in the mail or they would get told by their advisor that they can go to the school. But this went on for a while. And I think the one thing was the college I attended, NYIT, was really able to hold my attendance at the school. But in any case, Yale was really interested with me. And what happened was I ended up giving them a list of tournaments that I was going to play in 1987. And I told them when they're going to get played. And from talks with them and with my advisor, I found out that they did watch my tennis tournaments on cable television there in Connecticut, and they saw me win the tournaments. I think one tournament in particular they saw me win was the Fisher Open also, and they saw my name clearly spelt there. At the time, it was John Riggio. They know it was exactly the same. And they were all cheering for me from what the admission office described to me, that there were a number of people watching the match there at Yale, and they were all happy about me winning, and they saw the proof of me winning on television, that they really saw that. And they also described back then the cable vision. The cable vision was of course extra fees to watch that, and the sport channels and everything.
Yeah.
So they were really watching it on the cable vision, and they had all the channels to watch it there, and they were really impressed with it. There was also some interesting things just discussing with them. I had discussed all kinds of interesting things. I was saying, most people would just get a letter or they'd get a phone call and it'd make like a 5-minute decision. But with there, I was talking to them so many times about really where I would live, that I would get a wife living there, and how my driving schedule would go, driving back to the tennis center in Flushing, New York City. And there's even some discussion of even having like a security guard. I would hire a security guard to check on me in the college to make sure everything would go safe. They were all very interesting discussions. Most people would just give it a try. I think at that time I was willing to just give it a chance. I didn't have any problems myself giving the whole thing the chance. But in fact, that's what really happened. So that was a really very interesting set of phone calls and all kinds of different things, references of people I know, and all of my references checked out, of course. There were no problems. And so that was really very interesting. I think just I had a similar experience with the Cooper Union also in Manhattan, New York. And I think the overall reason was because advisor, the advisors first, they were really part of NYIT. And
Mhm.
so this whole thing that was going through, they were able to keep me there. But it was very interesting what had happened at that time. And so there were all kinds of different things going on, and all those different things, wondering if I'm going to go to this school, wondering if I'm going to go to that school, and how would work out, and all those different things about going to the cottage were taking place at that time. So just the simple thing of getting a go-ahead to go to the cottage, and most people just go there, sign up, and attend the class, and you could always leave if you wanted. I mean, but this was very involved, and so I think in the end, the whole thing was the cottage I attended was able to keep me there. I think maybe they had a secret decision involved with saying I should really leave and go to this other school instead, and that's what had happened. So also, just as far as tennis goes, I have so many stories. I didn't add them all into the book. One of them that's an interesting story is weightlifting and working out with weights. And one of them was so when I was a young teen, I had my coach, Anthony Cambria, and he explained the whole situation with exercise and working out. He did say it's good to work out with weights, but overall, the limit of the weight should only come out to 30 pounds for a tennis player. If you start working out with heavy weights, it's going to cause a problem with your muscles. You're not going to swing your arm around and move around the court very loosely. You're going to start to push the ball. And I listened to what he said. So at that age, I did work out with light weights, but I kept the weights down like he was telling me. He gave me an exact number of 30 pounds. And but what happens as I got older, and there was all a lot of peer pressure. Everyone was going to like Bally's Jack LaLanne and
I remember
working
that.
out.
Valleys.
And so when in between the tennis playing, when there were those little stops, what happened is I ended up after work heading over to the weight gym. I ended up getting into too much weights. I slowly started to get into too much weights. I think after 1999, when the career had sort of come to an end and it didn't have to do with weights or anything, I ended up continuing weightlifting, and I ended up getting into too much heavy weights compared to just playing tennis and keeping it light. And I think one thing just from years ago was my experience for one in gymnastics. In gymnastics, there's no weights, but like in 2 weeks, you can get in excellent physical shape, very strong. And this was much better. No one thought of an idea of having like a set of gyms that are really based on gymnastics, that they don't use any weights, and you would still get great shape. And I was always wondering that now, year after the years, there was a big push to do the thing with the weightlifting. But I think a lot of people in tennis, gymnastics, I don't think you really need too much weights. You don't need those heavy weights. I think the gymnastics style of training would really do it. And so these recent years, I sort of stayed away from the heavy weights and try to keep it a little light. I think I started to weightlift a little too much. I started to get these muscle lines over here. I was weightlifting a little too much in my late 20s. And But in recent years, I'm trying to keep it just a little thin, just to keep myself in good shape. It seems to be working pretty good. I notice people when you work out too much with the weights, what happens is a lot of that weightlifting it turns into fat, and it's so difficult to get rid of the fat. I was used to being so lean. I only had 3% body fat. My doctor, when I was younger, took all the different tests, my blood tests, and that's how I was his number one in shape patient of all his whole career in my weight class, and he was that's I was so lean at that time. I just noticed trying to add on too much. If you weight lift too much, it can start to turn into fat, and you get a problem. That's then you have this extra weight on you. So that was one interesting thing, and but I think one thing I have some really very interesting stories here. I have so many amazing, shocking stories. There's one amazing story that when I was younger, I was told some very interesting things by the coach of the tennis players there at the National Tennis Center, Vitas Gerulaitis. So he used to come down to my court in Jericho. That's where my court was. I was winning. I was able to hold my court. So he came to my court. And he of the players there. He's also involved with also giving players like little teaching hints and things like that. And I think one he did, he wanted to just tell me this amazing stories about his upbringing. And I don't think I'd really need to keep it a secret. It's very interesting. It's very shocking.
Ah.
What he was telling me was a story that when he was growing up, when he was young, someone was making fun of him. And he became so enraged at a young age at whoever this was. I don't know if he was imagining things that someone was making fun of him or what was happening. But what happened, he told me he when he took his father's gun and he shot him.
Ah.
And in the hours after that, he tells me a story that this person died and they went on a hunt looking for who shot him. It turns out Vitas Gerulaitis told me the story that that's when he came to America. He fled and he was living here. He wasn't living here alone. His family was here too. And but the sad thing about it was ever since that time, he tells me he was always living like an outlaw. His whole life, I don't know. He somehow he was saying he was living like an outlaw because since he was the captain, he used to tell certain players that weren't winning to leave the camp. Instead of calling them on the phone or sending them a letter or something like that, he did it very abruptly. He used to go up to them and tell them personally, you have to leave the camp right now. So a lot of times they listened. One day I was there, one player he told to leave the camp. Maybe it was a few days later or a week later or something like that. A car drove up and this kid, he got out of the back seat and he ended up shooting at Vitas Gerulaitis and he shot him in the stomach. And and I think Vitas was very interesting. He just walked back to play more tennis. He was able to handle this type of thing. And the kid got back in the car and they drove away. So at that point, I was the first time I told him, are you supposed to call the police? And he says, no, he's not going to call the police at all. Because it's really his job that he's running a tennis, he's the captain of a tennis camp, and he has to tell people to leave. I think his style of telling people to leave was maybe too insulting to them, causing a big
Mm-hmm.
problem, made them enraged. This made this happen. So that was one instance. Then another instance happened, I think, a couple more times. One, I was at the National Tennis Center in Flushing, and the same thing happened. He had to tell someone to leave directly to them. Maybe a week later, they come back and they do the same thing. They shot right at him. I don't know if the bullet hit him or anything. And I said the same exact story to him, trying to teach him. I said, you're supposed to call the police. I mean, and he was saying that he doesn't want to call the police because I think from when he was young, those problems made him live in a world where he feels like an outlaw. I thought he was wrong about it, but that was some very strange thing about playing with him, that he was living in a world that he didn't want to call the police about anything, and somehow he just went on the same side. I noticed he didn't change his style of telling people to leave. You figure after the first incident, maybe he would call them on the phone or something. He always kept to the same way of doing
Yeah.
things. And this was really very strange. I think as far as really crazy things happening also, at the Jericho courts when I was playing my pro tennis, I guess I was there, and wherever I was playing, sort of like, what kind of people were around the courts, I look over next to the high school and I see an older male. He looks like maybe someone's father, like he's a father to someone's child going to the high school. So I see him walk over to the high school, and I see him walking back with a kid next to him. So I thought, wow, that's his son, and he's walking him home, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when he gets right to the house that they're living in, which is right adjacent to the high school, I see him push this kid. He pushes him, like pushing him down to fall down on the floor, and then grabs him. I ran right over to the school, and I met someone there at the school. He must have been a school teacher. I really don't know even who it was, but I told him right away what was happening, and he called the authorities, and they were able to get this neighbor. So there was some kind of crazy thing happening where this person moved in next to the school, was taking I don't know how many kids, and then he ended up this particular young kid. I went over there trying to stop the whole thing. And I think usually what happens is, if in the neighborhoods I hear about people getting kidnapped, they usually don't get shot and killed. They usually hold them a little while. So when I went over there, figured they'd have like a couple hours to get them. Unfortunately, I heard the story the next day that this kid was killed by this adult that had moved in next to the school. They announced it in the morning announcements, which is really sad. But the whole thing was ended. They were able to get him, and I was able to act fast enough where they were able to get him. They got him in the act of whatever he was doing there next door, and they stopped the whole thing.
Oh.
And so that was another thing that was going on.
Well,
So playing my tennis there, I ended up seeing the strangest thing, and I stopped it immediately. I didn't think it was funny or anything like that, and really just ran and got help right away and stopped that whole story. I mean, that was really unbelievable. And so that is one very interesting story that happened. And so I just wanted to share that with you. And I think with the stories, like with the yeah, with that interesting story about with Vetus Scariolitis that was there, and that was just an interesting story that was going on years ago.
mm-hmm.
Uh, I think the thing with him doing the things, having people leave the camp and things like that, maybe he had to find a better way to do it. And I thought it was a little interesting that they didn't change their style of doing things either. They kept up that same idea of him telling people to leave and bringing about a lot of anger. And of course, they blamed Vitas. I don't know if Vitas was really the one making the decisions even to have him leave the tennis camp. It might have just been that the player lost too many matches in a row. And I know from playing in the tennis camp, I went past 18 years old and started playing with the adult players. The first pressure is they tell people to lose the match. They tell them to lose the match. Then by losing the match, you're supposed to do better. Like they'll give you some other matches someplace else, and then you could win. And so if someone's playing there, first they give people the pressure to want to lose the match instead of winning the match. And then if you then lose a few matches in a row, they can then tell you to leave. They look at the numbers, see that you lost the matches, there was no matches contested, and then they'd have the person leave. A lot of times when people leave, they might not get angry. They just find someplace else to play. Some people, they just give another camp a try.
Hmm.
Um, there's even that idea, I think, going through the ITF, if you don't make the ATP, which is the top league which I played in, you could play the ITF. But the ITF, what they do is they give you some time to see if you can improve slowly in the ITF, and then they give you another chance to make the ATP again. I once did give some people a second chance. One of them was at the Flushing, Vitas Gerulaitis put this together where he got some players, the top college players, the top ITF players, had them play me, and I was to recommend one player. So I went through playing them. I won every match against the opponents, but I was able to see how they played. And I did recommend one of the ITF players to move up to the ATP. And my choice was turned out very good. He stayed in the ATP playing for a number of years. He didn't get moved down or lose. So he was a lucky player. He got his second chance, and I was able to point out that he was good to play, and he did make it again playing in the ATP. So he was lucky. And Vitas Gerulaitis also selected another player of his choice that he liked, and he played for a while too, so he was also in there. So out of that whole group of players, two of them were able to stay with the ATP playing and trying to make it and win matches. So that was really very good. And so that was interesting. I think the downfall is the players that got turned away. Some of them couldn't handle it. They were too angry. There was a little bit of money involved at that time. There was about $20,000 per match involved with them playing to try to make it. And that also brought about some anger too, from what I was
Hmm.
told, that had to pay that money, but the paying the money only gave them a chance to play and get noticed and see if they could really move up at that point for that whole set of matches. And at that point, one of them did get so upset they came back and they did fire a shot at Vitas. So they were very upset at that point too. So that was another instance where that happened. And so that is it's pretty sad. I think over the years we didn't really have that kind of problem. I didn't have that kind of problem. I don't remember anything happening like that. I noticed there was a lot of outrage sometimes coming towards my sponsors and myself. Sometimes I talked about the incidents. I have them in my book too. The incidents with that happened here with Vitas, Gerulaitis, with these incidents, I did not put in the book. I
Okay.
left them out of the book,
Maybe for
and it's not necessary for me to add them in the book. I don't think I'm going to add that particular story there.
hmm
It's it is something that's a very interesting story. I think his problem where he didn't change anything that he was how he was telling people to leave. Maybe initially he was taught to do it that way. I don't know. He didn't explain that if he was taught to how to deal with the players, if he took any official training on how to deal with the players. And then I noticed he didn't change what he was doing. And so that was a really sort of interesting. And then also what happened when he was a very young child put him in a world where he felt like he was really living outside the law, which is very interesting. I think I could share a picture of Vitas Gerulaitis. I think while at it, I just did a little check and I have it here. Let me just share it.
Sure.
Okay, so this is his
And we just
Wikipedia.
got 3
And
more minutes, all right? Just want to make sure.
So I
Oh,
think here you pretty much show this, and there's no indication of anything like that on here that he
yeah.
had that kind of thing going on. I was lucky that whatever his situation was didn't affect me.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that's pretty good. I guess when he had that problem with people taking a shot at him, the bullets didn't seem to come over to me. So I'm happy about that because it's sort of just some kind of situation he got him in. And I think not calling the police at any of the incidents might have kept that problem going with him. That's why I kept suggesting to him he should just call the police. It doesn't make a difference if he feels like an outlaw. I explained to him. And then, I think it was lucky it was just an isolated thing that they were going after him. He was to blame for what had happened, which is pretty sad. And then this here, uh, just shows his basic list here. I think I just went through his
Yeah.
list here.
Okay.
And but I know him pretty much as a coach. I see he was a player for a long time, and but he was pretty much the captain of the players at the U.S. Tennis Center, and they pretty much centered themselves in that green building. I was alluding to the green building. They used to center themselves in that green building. It's so really very interesting. And so that was interesting. And Vidas Gerulaitis also had very interesting facets about him. Just to say that he was also something they don't show here, but he was also a actor. Used to do stage plays. He had amazing acting ability. I think that acting ability once overrolled in one tournament that he was saying that he won, and
Okay.
I was told it wasn't true. So
Oh,
I think that's why with the tennis, there's some things with people getting acting training, and then the acting training turns out to start to cause a fraud. And that was one problem. The only thing about acting training that people would do is if they took their acting training class, they told me it might equal like a nice little spot on maybe like a news report of
okay.
them or that. So taking that acting class did help them. I think it developing into like a some kind of lies or frauds of something is a separate issue. I didn't want to say it, but my parents, they told me this story that they really like coming to Long Island because in Brooklyn, all kinds of people who were into like acting developed this story of them doing all kinds of schemes to take money from people. And when they went from Brooklyn
Yeah.
over to Long Island, they were felt that they were getting away from that problem. They were happy about it. I think a lot of people were coming from some areas in Brooklyn, and they were getting away from some developing happening with people somehow becoming like con artists. Some of the
Oh,
con artists I thought were coming through acting. So this thing with acting, I was sort of refuting some things
and
about
sorry,
acting.
we got 30 more seconds. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So the thing with like Vitas really being a professional actor was interesting, but I think these stories of someone doing professional acting could somehow develop into some kind of con artist is pretty sad. That was the only sad thing about the whole thing with people doing acting. I think today, if I think of someone taking acting, I don't think it's bad, but somehow back then they was putting together this thing about people doing acting and becoming con artists and everything was really a sad story. I couldn't put it together that much, and some of that was living on Long Island was really getting away from those problems. So that was a happy thing about it. I was thinking we were getting away from
Hmm.
problems that would make anything worse. So that is good.
All right. John Riggio, thank you for everything today. How do we contact you quickly?
Yeah, of course. You can just go to my webpage, www.johnriggio.com, or you can go onto Facebook, John Riggio Pro Tennis Player, to get all these stories. Watch the podcast. I also have them on YouTube. Look up the same exact name. You'll see them on YouTube, and I have a whole list of them.
And look him up on Facebook, John Riggio, our pro tennis player. Thank you. Bye.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Hi, this is Terry Crews. actor, former football player, game show host, father of 5, and all-around big dude. I'm also an expert on drama. I know all kinds of drama. There's the good kind that comes with having a house full of kids. There's the bad kind like season-ending injuries. There's the necessary kind like having an agent in Hollywood. And there's silly drama like the drama around my percolating pectorals. And then there's the drama you can skip.
Skip the drama that comes with not having your high school diploma or equivalency. Find free adult education classes near you and finish your high school diploma. Visit finishyourdiploma.org.
Or text diploma to 97779. Message and data rates may apply. Reply stop to opt out. That's diploma to 97779. And leave the drama to actors like me.
Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.